Quick note, for each pick I'll discuss the players themselves and why I picked them in that spot for that team. If I debated the pick at all, I'll give you guys my thought process. Let's get into it. With the first pick in the draft, I have the Carolina Panthers selecting Ohio State quarterback CJ Stroud. He has the highest floor of any quarterback in this class because of his ability to play from a clean pocket and play in rhythm. When kept clean, he will absolutely tear defenses apart with elite accuracy and ball placement, which he showed time and time again in college. In 2022, Stroud achieved a 26.7 perfectly placed pass percentage, which led all FBS quarterbacks since 2021. By the way, attempting to say perfectly placed pass percentage was the most difficult thing I've ever had to do, besides your mom. He has a great arm and can fit passes into tight windows, and he's the best quarterback in this draft class at attacking the intermediate areas of the field where he perfectly layers throws in between defenders and safeties consistently. He also has very underrated athleticism. He showed a hesitancy to run, but he can create space for himself in the pocket with his legs, and he throws very well on the move. People peg him as a game manager, but his tape against Georgia shows that he has the ability to create and work outside of structure. In regard to weaknesses, he can be indecisive, he struggles under pressure, and many of his reads at OSU were predetermined. But I believe that under Frank Reich, a guy who somehow almost made Carson Wentz an MVP, CJ Stroud will fix these issues. I personally believe that Bryce Young's the best quarterback in this draft, but for the sake of what I believe to be the most realistic, I pick CJ Stroud. As fans, we've seen plenty of smokescreens throughout the years, but I really can't imagine that Josh McCown telling CJ Stroud to find a basketball court to play at when he finds his way to Carolina is a smokescreen. It really more sounds like an accidental hot mic pickup. Additionally, Frank Reich has expressed concern with Bryce Young's height. I actually do like CJ Stroud a lot and maybe higher on him than other people, but I don't necessarily agree with trading up and using lots of assets to acquire him. But I would agree with that move for Bryce Young. Outside of the value discussions though, I do love Stroud's fit here and I think he'd be an amazing quarterback for the Panthers. At number 2 overall, the Texans pick your mom. You can't get away with it! Just kidding, she sucks at football and will never make it in the league, and you're gonna have to tell. With the second pick in the draft, I have the Houston Texans selecting Alabama quarterback Bryce Young. If Young had even average size, he would be up there with Elway, Manning, Luck, and Lawrence as one of the best quarterback prospects of all time. His anticipation is probably the best of any quarterback I've ever seen. He puts the ball in the perfect spot for receivers before they're even close. He anticipates receivers better than I anticipate being disappointed, which is one of my main skills. He consistently makes NFL throws, he throws his receivers open, and he's a point-and-shoot quarterback who can see and throw. He's also a playmaker and a creator, and he has that Mahomesian ability to know where all the receivers are on the field without even looking at them. He has amazing pocket presence and has an awesome ability to start and stop, bursting to the side or forward to create space for himself in the pocket, but he rarely ever runs too early. He's always looking downfield to throw. For a short quarterback, he throws the ball extremely well over the middle of the field, and he's very poised under pressure. He has an incredible ability to reset and throw from the pocket, and he can really just make any play on the field. Outside of his height, he doesn't have many weaknesses. Unfortunately for NFL teams, size matters. Thankfully, that rule doesn't apply anywhere else in life. Right, guys? Wait, his 5'10 height is first percentile for quarterbacks, and his combine weight of 204 is 6th percentile. He definitely doesn't play at 204, and I have a hard time believing that he would even play at over 195. Other than his problematic size, he does hold onto the ball rather long, and he really only has average arm strength, but I don't think that these will present too many problems for him on the NFL level. In regard to my reasoning for this pick, Young is an absolutely easy fit here. The Texans desperately need a quarterback, and I believe that Young is the best one in this class. They've already tried a predator and a giraffe at quarterback, so they might as well try a midget too. I would never consider anybody else in the spot, and I really can't see him not being a top 10 quarterback. With the third pick in the draft, I have the Arizona Cardinals selecting Alabama edge rusher Will Anderson. Anderson's an explosive speed rusher with a great first step and very good bend around the edge. He plays with great leverage to drive back offensive linemen. Regardless of how skinny he may be, he plays with great flexibility to dip under offensive linemen, pursues the ball carriers in tight areas, and he slips in between double teams. His 4.6 40-yard dash is 79th percentile for edge rushers, and his 33 7/8 arm length is 80th percentile. This helps him create space. His combination of quickness, length, and refinement as a pass rusher makes it really difficult for offensive linemen to stay in front of him. He's a blue chip prospect for sure, but he really needs to work on his tackling. He had an atrocious missed tackle rate of 27.5% in 22, which actually got worse from his 2021 missed tackle rate of 13.8%. He's definitely a lighter speed rusher, and he's relatively strong for this prototype. You'll see him win with a bull rush, but he's not objectively strong for an NFL edge rusher, and he's likely to struggle against more powerful offensive linemen, like we saw against Tennessee's Darnell Wright. Ultimately, the Cardinals' pick was between Will Anderson, Tyree Wilson, Jalen Carter, and Christian Gonzalez. I don't believe that Arizona is even considering Jalen Carter because after Keim's DUI arrest and subsequent firing, it would be a terrible PR move. Although it was also a terrible PR move to post that video of Jonathan Gannon, so who the hell knows really.
Shots. Explosives, you can run.
Ultimately, I picked Will Anderson over Tyree Wilson because I have way less questions about his game and believe that he's a true blue chip prospect. At pick number 4 is the Colts. Many mock drafts had the Colts going with a quarterback at number 4, but I've heard a lot of rumors recently about the Colts looking heavily into quarterbacks outside of the first round, especially Hendon Hooker, who I have a video on in case you're curious about him. Hooker has connections with Peyton Manning and has a top 30 visit scheduled with the Colts, so it's possible that these rumors are true. With this in mind, I considered potentially trading out of the pick and then analyze trade scenarios and who may trade up. I first considered the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as an option. Levis was linked heavily with the Bucs recently, and he met with the Bucs at the Combine. Their options are Baker Mayfield and Trask. Mayfield gives Levis the ability to sit and develop, but also doesn't set the bar too high to get on the field. Daniel Jeremiah, one of the most plugged-in guys in the industry, had the Buccaneers selecting Levis in one of his most recent mock drafts, albeit at 19 overall. The Buccaneers GM, Jason Light, is a very active trader. He's made at least one trade in every draft and has traded 13 total times, trading up 9 and trading back 4. But he's only moved up in the first round once, and it was one spot to select Tristan Wirfs. There's some good reasons, but I ultimately don't see it as a possibility that they trade up for Levis. I also considered the Vikings. There's a lot of connections there with Kevin O'Connell's staff. Cousins is under his current contract until 2023, and they'd be able to go up and get a quarterback and have him sit under Cousins for a year. Unfortunately for the Vikings, they have a desperate need at cornerback, and they need their picks to round out their defense to maximize any window they may have, so I don't really see a trade-up as being very likely. I consider the Raiders, the Falcons, and also the Lions here, but I don't really find that they have any real reason to trade up unless they think that they're going to be a jump for a quarterback that they really want. With no trade partners and a need at quarterback, I'd lean with Will Levis here. Chris Ballard has a long history of drafting traits-based prospects, and they really need a starting QB. Levis has all the tools. His arm strength is elite, he has great size and great frame, and he's a great athlete for his position. His calling card, though, is definitely his arm strength, which is arguably the best in the class. He's a very quick motion that he uses to release the ball at the flick of his wrist. He can still throw absolute bombs down the field when he doesn't have a good base and when his footwork isn't good. His release speed and quick motion give him leeway to be late on reads and allow him to make throws NFL DBs wouldn't even think he'd attempt. Outside of his traits, he's a very tough guy, he's willing to stand in tight pockets, and he's an effective runner, especially in short yardage situations. Unfortunately, when it comes to weaknesses, there's a lot, so I'll just hit on the main ones because we'd be here all day otherwise. He has too many good enoughs on his tape and not enough perfect execution. This reminds me of Josh Allen because it's similar to the type of playstyle where you can only get by when you have elite playmakers around you to increase your margin for error. His footwork and his mechanics are inconsistent, leading to a large number of misses on easy throws and a lot of over and underthrown balls. His decision making is worse than mine after about 9 Michelob Ultras, and my decision making is pretty fucking bad at that point. This shows in his 25 interceptions and 17 fumbles over his collegiate career. He hesitates, he stares down receivers, and he's often throwing the ball way too late. His understanding of space and leverage is also questionable, and the tape shows that he often misjudges where to put the ball, even when he does put it where he wants. Lastly, his pocket presence is one of the worst I've ever seen. He literally couldn't feel pressure if it hit him in the face, because it very literally does hit him in the face. He consistently struggles to feel a rush and consistently struggles to avoid it, despite having the athleticism to do so. Ultimately, I landed on this pick because I believe Shane Steichen could do a lot with him. Steichen has worked in many different schemes, and he's the right kind of guy to pair with Levis because he has the ability to scheme around his players rather than having his players conform to a scheme. Although I wouldn't make this pick personally, I would be somewhat surprised if Steichen wasn't able to work around Levis's deficiencies, and I think that he would be a good pick for the Colts. At number 5 is the Seattle Seahawks. The popular pick here is Jalen Carter, and I do actually really love that pick, but after the whole Malik McDowell incident, they may not be comfortable taking him here. Additionally, there's been a lot of buzz that John Schneider and Pete Carroll have placed more emphasis on drafting high character guys and avoiding players with character red flags. So to add some variety here, although I still think Carter would be a great fit for them, I'm going to go with Tyree Wilson, who I also think would be a great fit. He's got elite upper body and lower body strength, and he has a more powerful punch than the kind you'd find at a frat party. His combination of strength and athleticism give him the versatility to play on the inside or outside, where he can anchor against double teams. His 96th percentile arm length, 6'6" height, and elite strength make him a reliable tackler in the run game. A lot of analysts characterize him as boom or bust, but I don't personally agree with that because he has such a high floor as a run defender, but it does remain to be seen whether he'll develop into a good pass rusher. One of his strengths is that he has a devastating bull rush, but in terms of weaknesses, he's very unrefined. He doesn't show many pass rush moves, and he relies heavily on his traits to win over his technique, which just doesn't work in the NFL. His hand usage is very passive, his reactive athleticism is subpar, He also frequently mistimes the snap and is the last defender to move off the line. Lastly, because of his height, it's difficult for him to gain leverage, and he often plays with high pad level. Ultimately, I decided on Tyree Wilson because the Seahawks desperately need help on their defensive line, and he'd do a great job with them. He can slide right in as a 3-4 defensive end. Provides a really nice floor with his great run defense, and he has all the tools to develop into a fantastic pass rusher. Pairing him with Draymond Jones on the defensive line and having Uchenna and Nwosu come in there and rush the passer immediately bolsters their defense, so I love this pick for them if they don't go with Carter. With the 6th pick in the draft, I have the Detroit Lions selecting Florida quarterback Anthony Richardson. Richardson by far has the most elite traits at the quarterback position we've ever seen. At 6'3", he has 66th percentile height, and his weight of 244 pounds is 96th percentile. Not only does he have the typical quarterback traits of elite arm strength and size, but he has a relative athletic score of 10. On a scale of 10. His 40-yard dash of 4.43 is 98th percentile for quarterbacks. His vert of 40.5 inches was 99th percentile. His broad jump of 129 inches is 99th percentile. And his 10-yard split of 1.53 seconds is 96th percentile. His insane RAS score actually pushed down fellow rookie Cam Newton, who just recently had his pro day for Auburn. As a quarterback, he has great pocket presence to avoid defenders. This shows in his 9.2% pressure to sack rate, making him first of 140 qualifiers in not allowing pressure to turn into sacks. He should become a nun with how many sacks he avoids. He has the elusivity to make defenders miss in the open field, and his contact balance is insane. It takes multiple defenders to bring him down. But it's disingenuous to just call him an athlete. He has elite arm strength and movement skills such that he can do literally anything on the field. There are plays on his tape that show incredible anticipation, incredible reading the field, and incredible accuracy. If you put his top 10 plays up next to any quarterback and didn't show any of the other plays to anybody, they'd think that he was by far the best. But what would also be disingenuous is hiding the rest of the tape. You see, he shows the ability to do everything, but his problem is he's so inconsistent. He struggles to consistently read the leverage of defenders and anticipate open receivers. He constantly waits for receivers to be open instead of throwing them open, and even when they are open, he stares them down and waits way too long to throw the ball, making him late on throws. He missed a lot of opportunities by refusing to pull the trigger or by throwing it too late. His mechanics are incredibly inconsistent, he plays with a bad base, and this leads to atrocious accuracy at times and very shoddy ball placement at best. He constantly displays the inability to read the whole field, often limiting his eyes to 1 or 2 receivers and not moving off his main reads. He's often way too early to pull the ball down and run, and hardly ever resets himself in the pocket. It's really his inconsistency that's the kicker here. He's shown the ability on tape to do every single one of these things, but he struggles to sequence together NFL level qualities into one play. If I believe this, why wouldn't I just take somebody else here then? I could, but the Lions are the perfect situation for Richardson. Jared Goff being their quarterback gives him all the time in the world he needs to sit. Richardson is very inexperienced, having only 455 dropbacks in the entirety of his college career, but at 21 years old, he still has plenty of time to sit behind a starter and develop upon his tools and the instincts he already has. Additionally, you really want to get Anthony Richardson in there with Ben Johnson, one of the best offensive coordinators in the league, before he leaves for a head coaching gig. Ben Johnson could even design special packages for Richardson to come in and make an impact in his first year on offense. The fit here was way too perfect for me to pass up, even though he has obvious flaws in his game at the moment. And number 7 is the Las Vegas Raiders. Most of the Raiders' needs revolve around defense, particularly interior defensive line, cornerback, and linebacker. I personally think they need more production from the edge position, but they have so much money wrapped up in Chandler Jones that you really don't want to take him off the field. On the flip side though, he might be more productive if he has somebody to rotate with. It's way too early for linebacker here, so I really only considered interior defensive line and cornerback. In Patrick Graham's defense, they could really use a Dalvin Tomlinson or Damon Harrison type guy, like the guys Patrick Graham had in his time with the Giants, but I don't personally see Clemson's Brian Brzee or Pitt's Kalijah Cansey as good fits for that type of role. Although Jalen Carter would be a great fit for that role, they already used up all their first rounder who's bad at driving tokens on Henry Ruggs, and the store's fresh out. They don't need a cornerback all that badly because Nate Hobbs is a good corner, but at number 7 they have the pick of the litter at the cornerback position, and I think that they're going to go with Christian Gonzalez. Gonzalez is an extremely versatile corner in that he can thrive in any coverage. In the words of Bruno Mars, Gonzalez is also smoother than a fresh jar of Skippy. His very fluid hips and very good reactive athleticism help him to effortlessly mirror receivers. At the combine, he clocked in at 4.38 for his 40-yard time, which was good for 88th percentile, and added a 97th percentile broad jump and 97th percentile vertical jump. His great top-end speed and fluid burst allows him to not get beat over the top, and he really doesn't allow separation very often. He's also a surprisingly good tackler, with only 3 missed tackles in 2022. In terms of concerns, he doesn't really have that killer instinct you want to see from a corner, although maybe it might be better for the Raiders to not have another killer on their team. He can be late to get his head around and doesn't anticipate route breaks all that well. Ball tracking skills are average, and he had 0 interceptions before transferring to Oregon in 2022. However, this year, he had 4 interceptions. In contrast with Devon Witherspoon, he definitely wins more with elite athleticism rather than elite anticipation and awareness. Gonzalez is also very skinny and could stand to add more functional strength. He isn't all that physical at the catch point and may struggle against larger receivers. Ultimately, he has all the athletic tools to be an elite corner, but just needs to become more refined. There's plenty of time for this at 20 years old. I can think of no better place for him to go than the Raiders because of how amazing Patrick Graham is as a defensive coordinator. I really think Graham and his infinite creativity can do a lot with Gonzalez due to his versatility, and he'll coach up Gonzalez to be one of the best in the game. At number 8 overall, I have the Falcons going with Nolan Smith. Nolan Smith is actually one of my guys in this draft. He might be the best athlete in this class with a 4.39 40 time, which is 99th percentile, a 41.5 vertical jump, which is also 99th percentile, and a 128-inch broad jump, which is 96th percentile. Despite the fact that he's undersized, he's an NFL-level run defender because of his athleticism, instincts, and sure tackling ability. He's a very high motor player. He'll keep fighting through plays even if he loses off the snap. He plays with great leverage, he has fantastic bend around the edge to flatten the quarterback, and he has a more explosive first step than a firework in the hands of Jason Pierre-Paul. Ultimately, he's an extremely high character player with an incredible work ethic and drive. In regard to his weaknesses, Smith is kind of an underdeveloped pass rusher. He doesn't show the ability to consistently win with an inside counter, and he doesn't really win much with pass rush moves in general. His lower body strength is below average, which makes it difficult for him to collapse the pocket on speed to power and bull rushes. He's undersized, which hasn't really hurt him yet at the college level, but projects to potentially be an issue at the NFL level. He's also coming off a torn pec, which caused him to miss a lot of the 2022 season. Despite those flaws, I still think he's going to be an incredible football player. He has all the athletic tools to build upon elite instincts, motor, and work ethic, which is not something you could teach. The Falcons are supposedly in love with him, and also if you didn't know, the Falcons GM came out this year earlier saying that they pay special attention to prospects who are from the state of Georgia, which is Nolan Smith because he's from Georgia and he played at Georgia. So I really think that he'd be a great fit here. He also pairs really well with Arnold Ebiketie, who's a pass rusher they took last year, who is pretty much only a pass rusher at the moment. While Nolan Smith works on his pass rushing moves, they could have Nolan Smith defending the run and Ebiketie defending the pass. If this player fell to number 9, I don't think the Bears would even slightly hesitate, and that's Jalen Carter. Carter's combination of speed and strength is rare. He's an explosive get-off and relatively elite change of direction and lateral agility for an interior defensive lineman. Offensive linemen have an incredibly difficult time mirroring him and catching him to get hands into his chest because of his quick feet and movement skills. He has an extremely powerful punch, an elite leg drive to collapse the pocket in the pass game and anchor in the run game. His explosiveness and strength paired with his quick and active hands and movement skills help him to win reps from the beginning and to dictate the rep for the entirety of the snap. He's a great technician, utilizing swims, spins, speed to power, chops, bull rushes, rips, and other moves. He's also extremely versatile. He can line up on the edge or the interior and be disruptive from wherever you put him. Jalen Carter is unstoppable if you don't game plan around him, and he still might be unstoppable even when you do. But in terms of weaknesses, by now we've all heard the character concerns. The legal stuff is cleared up at this point, so it's not as much of a PR issue, but it still speaks to his maturity. I don't know about the facts of the event to say how it reflects on Carter, and I also don't know him personally, but from my understanding, teams view it as an issue. Additionally, Carter has conditioning issues, which were clear on tape before his problematic pro day performance. Carter will lose stamina mid-play, and will sometimes react slowly to the snap and lose explosion from his get-off when he plays too many snaps in a row. Outside of these concerns, any other concerns are really too small to address here, but the issues of maturity and conditioning are very large concerns to NFL teams. Although many believed that the Bears would take Paris Johnson, I really can't see them passing up Jalen Carter. The Bears were 31st against the run and 32nd in sacks in 2022. Out of their 20 sacks, only 10.5 came from the defensive line, and their leader in sacks was actually their safety, Jaquan Brisker, not anybody on the defensive line. No Bears defender ranked in the top 60 in pressures, and PFF had the Bears pass rush ranked as last in the league and run defense as second to last in the league. It's clear that Eberflus relies on having a good 3 tech up front. When he was with the Colts, he had DeForest Buckner, and last year the Bears tried to sign Larry Ogunjobi to play that role before it fell through. Carter would easily be able to play this role and would be dominant, assuming there are no more character concerns. He has to work on his conditioning, but that's not as uncommon as you'd think for an interior defensive lineman. He has the versatility to play anywhere on the front, and I really can't imagine a defensive head coach like Eberflus passing up on Carter, especially because Eberflus relies so heavily on that 3 tech position. At number 10 overall, we had the Philadelphia Eagles. They could use a guard, but Osiris Torrance at 10 is quite a reach for me, and he's my offensive guard number 1. They could take Paris Johnson and consider moving him into guard, especially because he has experience there, but it's not that big of a need for them, and I really think that they want to try to get Cam Jurgens on the field since Kelsey is back at center. I also really like the Bijan Robinson pick for them here, and I think it'd make their offense absolutely dominant, but I do think that Rashad Penny can do the same if he could stay healthy. I think trading out of this pick may be the best option for them and gives them the best value, especially because I can imagine teams like the Titans, Jets, Patriots, Steelers, and Buccaneers fighting for Paris Johnson, who I have as OT1 in this class. I really love the idea of the Buccaneers coming up because you don't really see it often, and Light is a very active trader, and he's traded up for a tackle before. It's an extremely small sample size and he only traded up 1 pick, but let's just forget that. Typically, you're not supposed to spend a lot of draft capital to move up in a year that you're supposed to replenish the roster, but I think the Buccaneers are in kind of a unique situation. They still have Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, so they still have a lot of talent on the offense, and they could potentially get a quarterback in there to make them a contender again. But they do really need a good offensive lineman, and I think it would be a great move for them to move up to secure their tackle of the future and let him develop this year. So without putting too much thought into the trade, I thought it was a fair trade to have Philadelphia trade pick 10 and pick 219 and have Tampa Bay trade pick 19 and pick 50. And with this pick, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers selecting Paris Johnson, who will be going from the Buckeyes to the Buccaneers to fill their empty tackle spot. Paris Johnson is athletic, lengthy, and very versatile. He's explosive off the ball, he has fast feet, great lateral speed, and rare hip fluidity and movement skills for his size. His 92nd percentile arm length and 100th percentile wingspan make him a great reach blocker, allowing him to seal easily and make it difficult for defenders to avoid his grasp. He has great coordination in open space to block on the move and is very good at redirecting edge rushers around the arc. He has a tenacious mentality and finishes his blocks into the ground. Most of his weaknesses are technique related. He doesn't time his punches very well and he's often late to punch. When he does make contact, he doesn't often have a lot of pop in his hand to stop the momentum of rushers, and he often misplaces his hands. He's really more of a receiver of contact than an initiator, which to me shows that he's not confident in his technique, especially given the fact that he plays with a tenacious side in most of his other play. His grip strength is below average, and I'd like to see him sustain blocks a bit longer. He can be guilty of oversetting at times and undersetting and giving up his outside shoulder too easily. His balance is also a bit suspect, and his footwork and base could use improvement. And when I say his base, I don't mean his center of gravity. I mean his base in Clash of Clans. No, I'm just kidding, this video isn't sponsored. Ultimately, I think this is a great pick for the reasons I said before. The Buccaneers desperately need an offensive tackle, and Paris Johnson has all the tools to be the best one in the class. They could build a dominant offensive line with him and Tristan Wirfs. I don't necessarily expect Paris Johnson to be amazing day one, but in this year with Baker Mayfield, it will give him time to progress until he can protect somebody who will eventually be throwing to Godwin and Evans. I think this would be a great move for them. So that's it for this video. Let me know what you guys think. I'd love to hear your thoughts on any of the picks here and what you'd do differently, or if you do the same. Subscribe and comment as it really helps out the channel. Thanks all, much appreciated.